morning, Flatirons. So glad you guys are here. Let's stand up together, sing this out this morning.
Silence
fall to the depths, but you gave your life for mine, your life for mine.
Hey Flatirons, welcome to last week in our Echo series. If you're interested in the other messages, you can get them online at flatirons.church.com. Also, stay to the very end. We have a special sneak peek at what's coming up next weekend.
Today is the final week of this series, Echo. Right? If you need reminded or you haven't been here or whatever, it's been a series on worship. All right? And what we've been trying to figure out is two things. We're trying to figure out what is worship, specifically the thing where we get together in rooms like this and we sing. All right, so what is that? What is worship and why is it important? And then also we're trying to figure out who is God and why is he deserving of our worship. Those are the two things we've been trying to tackle in this series. And we've been talking about those things by taking songs that we sing in here every single week and breaking them down verse by verse, lyric by lyric, to figure out what is this song saying about worship, and then when we sing it, what are we singing to and about God? That's what we've been doing. We've done that for 3 weeks now, right? When we took the song Amazing Grace and a song called Here For You and a song called Who You Say I Am, and we broke them down and talked about them. Those are all the songs that we just sang in this room. All right, and for this last week, we're going to take a brand new song. All right, we sang it for the first time last weekend. We put it up online on social media. I hope that you saw it and got familiar with it. It's a song that's new to us, but we're going to start playing it all the time in these rooms. It's a song called Be Enthroned. All right? And I'm really excited about this talk today. All right, in fact, this talk is the reason I wanted to do a series on worship. When I learned what we're going to talk about today, I went to Jim's office and I was like, you got to hear this. This stuff is crazy. We got to do a whole series on worship because of what we're going to talk about today. And what we're going to talk about today has been the number one thing that has most changed the way that I worship. I worship God in a totally different mindset now. And it's been awesome, so I'm excited about it. I'm also really nervous about it for the very same reason. All right, not normal nervous. All right, normal nervous happens all the time. That's where I walk up the steps and I see there's thousands of you and my stomach feels like I ate Applebee's even though I didn't. That's normal nervous, right? So I'm normal nervous right now, but I'm also extra nervous. And what I'm nervous about is this. More than any other talk I have ever given, this content of this talk is above our heads. All right, we're only going to be able to catch little glimpses of it and snag little slivers of it because today we're talking about stuff that humans will never completely, totally, 100% understand. Not until Jesus either comes back or we die and go to heaven. All right, so I want to say this right up at the front, right at the very beginning, so that we're all on the same page and you're not mad at me later, and that we're all in the right mindset for this talk, all right? Because today is different. Today is less about, it's actually not really about us leaving in 30 minutes with a clear, practical next step for how Jesus can heal our addictions or our marriages or whatever. We do that all the time, but that's not what today is. Instead, today is all about this. We are going to try our best to step into the mystery of who God is. And we are going to try our best to grasp even just a sliver of his incomprehensible, epic power. And we're going to try to walk into that mystery and catch just a glimpse of it and then worship God for it. This might be one of those talks where there's a lot of stuff flying at you and you're like, wait, what? And then you catch something and you get just a glimpse of how powerful God is, and it'll make you want to worship him for it. And that's all we're out to do today. All right, all we're out to do is put ourselves into that mystery of God and worship him for it. But because it's stuff that, humans will never totally, completely understand on this side of existence, we're going to need help, right? Like I can't write a talk good enough to articulate it. And so what I'm going to ask at the beginning is that you pray with me. I'm going to double pray. I'm going to prayer sandwich this talk. All right. So right off the bat, would you please close your eyes and pray with me? God, we're thankful that we're here today. God, there's people who have come into this room from all different walks of life. We've believed in you for decades, and we're starting to lose touch with you, or we're in this room, we're just trying to figure it out for the very first time. God, I believe that regardless of where we are on that spectrum of our faith and our belief in you, I believe there is nothing more powerful than some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. And I believe that there's nothing more powerful than you giving us even just like a glimpse of your unfathomable mystery of who you are. God, you're eternally good, and we thank you for that. God, what I'm praying for today is that you help me to articulate this well, and that you help us to grasp in our heads and our hearts how incredible you are. If we could even just get a picture of it today, that would be enough, and that's what I'm praying for. So God, please, as you're present in this room, move into our heads and our hearts and teach us something new and powerful about yourself. And I pray this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen. So let's get started. So the worship pastor at our Aurora campus, his name is Dan Optave. He's a super great guy. He's Australian too, so he's just great to listen to. And so I was talking with him to hear his accent. Not really. I was talking with him, and he brought up this Be Enthroned song. And this was about a month ago when I was still prepping for this series. I had never heard of the song. I go back to my office, I pull it up on Spotify, and immediately it became one of my favorite worship songs. All right? Now, to let you into where I'm at, before I started studying for this series and studying what worship is and why it's important. Before that, I was never the kind of person to have a favorite worship song, ever. I actually didn't even listen to worship music outside of these rooms. Whether that makes me a good pastor or a bad pastor, I don't know. But I was just probably always in my car listening to some crappy 90s music that you would hate because I like weird music, all right? So it wasn't until I started studying what worship really is and why it's important that I started to listen to worship music outside this place, and immediately Being Throned became one of my favorite songs. And it's one of my favorite worship songs because it's all about the number one thing I've learned that has changed the way I worship. It's all about how God is eternal. He's eternal. What does that mean? It means that God is in all times, at all times. I've always known that God is eternal, but this is the thing that I'm starting to catch a glimpse of, that he's showing me, and I'm starting to catch a glimpse of why this is so important for us to understand whenever we worship, whenever we sing songs in here. God is eternal. He's in all times, at all times. All right? I am one of those people who loves a complete brain teaser, right? Like, so for example, I love one of those movies that's really hard to figure out. Okay, so as an example, Inception, the movie Inception, I think is one of the greatest movies ever made. I don't know if you know this one. It's Leonardo DiCaprio. It's the whole dream within a dream within a dream, and you watch it and you get a migraine. I like that, all right? I like a movie that's like a puzzle, and you have to work for it, but then when you understand it, it's really rewarding, all right? But even if you're like me and you like that same kind of thing, I'm telling you, this eternity stuff, this God is eternal thing, we will never completely, totally grasp it on this side of existence. We're only going to be able to catch it in small glimpses. And that's because everything that you and I experience, we experience in the time frame of beginning and middle and end. Everything. Everything we experience has a start and a finish, right? There's morning and then there's night. There's birth and there's death. Right? But God, on the other hand, does not have a start. And he does not have a finish. He just has always and is always and will always just be, exist. He's always been. He's in all times, at all times. All right? Probably the best way to try to grasp this truth that God is eternal is this. It does mean this. God is every bit as present right now with us in this room as he is also right now somehow present thousands of years ago when he made the place, or when Jesus died on a cross. And God is every bit as present right now here in this room with us as he is also somehow present thousands of years from now when Siri takes over and robots rule the earth, or whatever that looks like, right? He's in all times, at all times. God isn't stuck in a timeline like we are, right? Where you're just watching your clock and it's minute after minute and you never know what the next minute holds and you never know what tomorrow holds. He's not stuck in that, and that's because God is eternal. He's in all times, at all times. And if that hurts your head, that's fine, that's normal. All right? Like, in fact, you can try this. You should try this. You should, sometime today, go find like 2 or 3 minutes of silence to yourself and try to actually understand eternity. No beginning, no end, no such thing as time or time passing, just foreverness. And sit there in silence and try to picture it. And you might have a moment where you catch a glimpse of it and you'll be like, huh, and your eyes will get hot and you'll vomit on your shirt just a little bit. It's happened to me. It's crazy. We can't understand it, but then every now and then God will give us this little glimpse of what it means that he's eternal. And it's like, whoa, okay. And then you go do the dishes or whatever. It's powerful. Right? And here's why it's worth it, in my opinion, to talk about eternity today. Right? It's important for 2 reasons. So first of all, it's very good for us that God is in all times, at all times. That's very good for us because it means that we cannot surprise him. Okay? So there's some of us in this room that you're just like I was 8 years ago when I first walked into this room, and you're having these kind of thoughts in your head. You're thinking to yourself, okay, so this whole Jesus and forgiveness thing sounds good, right? But it could never count for me, right? Because I'm too messed up and you don't know the things I've done. If that's you and you have that thought in your head, I mean, you're right. I don't know the things that you've done, but I can tell you that God does know the things that you've done, and God actually knows the things that you will do, and he has eternally always known about them. And because of Jesus, he has eternally always forgiven you for them. He's eternal. If God was not eternal, All right? If he was stuck just like we are in the timeline, never knowing what tomorrow holds, if he was not eternal, you and I could never experience the freedom that Jesus said he died for. We couldn't experience freedom. Every day we would be on a tightrope, right? Every moment, every decision, we would be at risk of disappointing God, because disappointment is when something bad and unexpected happens. Well, I didn't see that coming, and it's worse than I thought, and I'm disappointed. But because God is eternal, you can't disappoint him. You can't be too far gone. You can't be too messed up. And God could never revoke your forgiveness and take it back from you, because you can't surprise him. There's never going to be a moment where he's like, well, I didn't know you were going to do that. And so he takes your forgiveness away from you. And so right off the bat, maybe that's all some of us need to hear today. Right? It is the truth that because God is eternal, you can't surprise or disappoint him. All right? The way to say it is like this: God has always known what he was getting into when he loved you enough to die for you. No surprises, no disappointment. All right, so first of all, it's very good for us that God is in all times, at all times. The second reason it's worth our time to talk about eternity is where we're going to spend the rest of the day. And it's this: because God is eternal, you and I now have a better way to view our lives. And that is from an eternal point of view. And what that means is we take today and we put it in the context of what Jesus has done, is doing, and will do for us. All right? So that means there's a better way to view our lives than just being stuck right here, right now. Right? And we're scared of tomorrow because it's a mystery. Yeah, and we have baggage from our past because we can never let it go. There's a better way to view our lives, and it's like through these three lenses at the same time. You look at today and you never forget the promises that Jesus has made good on, the promises that Jesus is making good on, and the promises that he will make good on in your life. We never lose that reality as we view today. That's a better way to view our lives. And that's why I love this Be Enthroned song. All right, because of all the worship songs I've ever heard, it is the best that I've ever heard for worshiping a God who is eternal with an eternal point of view. And so let's take a look at these lyrics real quick. I'm going to kind of breeze through the verses to this song, and as I'm reading them, I want you to keep this eternal point of view thing in mind. So here's how the song starts. It says, "We've come to join the song sung long before our lives." All right, so when we worship, we're stepping into something eternal, something way bigger than just what's happening here on a Sunday. All right, and we've come to raise our voice along heaven and earth alike. And we've seen your faithful hand and your mercy without end. All right, without end, eternal. And God, you're a king who bled and died. You're a God who sacrificed. And all throughout this life we lead, from our past to now and on to eternity. And our endless, eternal praise will cry to you, Jesus be glorified, Jesus be glorified. You can see this whole song is trying to get you and I into a point of view that we're very unfamiliar with and that we don't usually live in. It's trying to get us into an eternal point of view where we take today and we don't lose sight of the context of what Jesus has done, is doing, and will do for us. But it's so foreign to us. All right, so let's talk about it for a second. All right, so I think that most of the time, like as a church, as a people, we do a really good job of worshiping God because of what Jesus has done for us. All right, we talk about it a lot. And so, meaning like Jesus has died on a cross and he put to death all of the judgment and condemnation and separation from God that we had. And then Jesus came back to life, and now we can enjoy life after death as well. We talk about it a lot, and we thank God for that a lot, which we should. We do a pretty good job of understanding what Jesus has done for us. All right, and then I think sometimes we do a good job of understanding what Jesus is doing for us. That's what we talked about last weekend, right? That Jesus has set us free so that we could live in freedom today, and that we are right now sons and daughters of the living God. That's what we talked about. That is our reality today, and sometimes we remember that, and we do a good job of worshiping him for that. Sometimes we understand what Jesus is doing in our lives today. But for most of us in the room, myself definitely included, the one we struggle with the most is worshiping God because of what Jesus will do for us, the promises that he will keep. I think we're unclear on the big picture most of the time, right? So if someone were to come to you and say, what will Jesus do for you? What promise will Jesus keep? I think a lot of us, we'd say, oh, I don't know. Or a lot of us, we go, oh, okay, I remember this. So when I die, Jesus will let me go to that heaven place. And that would be true, but it's not the big picture. So what is the big picture of what Jesus will do for us, the promises that he will keep? And to answer that, we got to head to the very last book of the Bible, a book called Revelation. All right? And if you know what this book is and what it's about, don't worry. I'm not going to get weird on you. I'm not going to set a date for the end of the world. We're not going to watch any, movie clips from Nicolas Cage's Left Behind or anything like that. All right? The book of Revelation is a strange book, but it's a great book. All right? And the book is actually a vision that Jesus gave to John. John was one of his 12 disciples. So Jesus gave John a vision of the future, and then John immediately wrote the thing down to share with all the Christians in the world, including us. And as Christians, we're supposed to cling to the book of Revelation. Because in the book of Revelation, we see the hope of our future, the hope of the promises that Jesus will keep. It gives us a glimpse into Jesus' eternal point of view. And the book of Revelation reminds us that God is in complete control of history, including the mess that you walked in here with. And the book of Revelation reminds us that God eventually will set everything straight. He'll fix everything here, including the mess you walked in here with. I think it's too bad we don't talk about this book more often, because even though it's kind of cryptic and mysterious, it gives us the big picture for our future. And according to Revelation, here's what Jesus will do for us in the future. It's a promise. So look at these verses. This is John explaining his vision, which I don't know if you've ever read Revelation, but this vision is either directly from Jesus or John is treating his glaucoma the Colorado way. See what I'm saying? It's from Jesus, though. All right. So this is John explaining his vision to us. He says this. He says, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, and the voice says this. He says, from now on, the dwelling of God is with men. He'll live with them. And they will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. John says it's a promise from Jesus that a time is coming will God and Jesus will come back here physically to live with us in a way that we don't experience yet. And then he keeps going. This is still the loud voice talking. He, God, will wipe every tear from their eyes. He'll wipe every tear from your eyes. And there'll be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. Those are the old things. And the old order of things has passed away. And he who is seated on the throne, that's God, says this. He goes, all those old order of things passes away because I am making everything new. That is the promise of what Jesus will do for anyone who believes in him. For all the people who have put their faith in him, we will get to live with God again in the same way that humans did before everything went off the tracks. It's a promise. This place, this earth, he will come back to it and he'll make everything new. He'll make everything perfect again. It will be Eden again. God will walk and talk and live with us and we'll get to experience it in a way we don't right now, meaning we will actually get to see him and touch him. We can sit down and eat dinner with and have a conversation with our God face to face. It's a promise. That's what's waiting for us. Like God says in Revelation, he's going to make everything new. Or in other words, he's going to make everything unlike anything you've ever experienced. And death and crying and mourning and pain, he will wipe those things away. Those things will pass away and die forever. And we will keep on living forever in perfection with him. It's a promise. See, we describe faith in here all the time as believing that Jesus, I almost forgot. That would be bad if I forgot. We describe faith in here all the time as believing that Jesus is who he says he is and that he'll keep all of his promises to us, right? And if we have faith, this is one of the promises we do believe that he will keep. So we believe that other kingdoms and governments and powers here and now on earth, those things will come and go and they don't affect us. It doesn't matter because we belong to God's kingdom. And God's kingdom, which like we've been talking about in here, God's kingdom is here and it is now and it is eternal. And because it's eternal, our future, that future that we just read about in Revelation, it's as good as done. We can count on it. We can expect it. And we're not supposed to ever forget that. That's what the eternal point of view thing is. We're supposed to always think about today in light of that promise of our future. We're supposed to remember that we're living in eternity right now, even if it feels like we're waiting for it to happen. Or as the Bible puts it like this: He, God, has made everything beautiful in its time, and He has set eternity into the hearts of men. We have eternity living in us, even though we can't fathom what God has done from beginning to end. In other words, we are living in eternity right now, even if we can't stop checking our watches all the time. It's as good as done, our future, and we can put our hope and trust and confidence that Jesus will fulfill that promise. That's an eternal point of view. All right, so God is eternal. He's in all times, at all times. And because of that, we can have an eternal point of view. We can see today within the context of, oh yeah, Jesus has already kept his promises to me. He's keeping them now, and he will keep that promise. I can look forward and count on that kind of future. But what does any of this have to do with worship? All right? And this is the thing that has most changed me. I've been so excited to share this with you. But to share it, I kind of want to walk us through the chorus of this Be Enthroned song, because the chorus explains what I'm getting at really, really well. All right, so here's the chorus to Be Enthroned. It goes like this. So we're talking to God and we say, "Be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all, Lord of everything. And unto you, God, the slain and risen King, we lift our voice with heaven, singing worthy, Lord of all." Two things I want to pull out of that chorus and focus on. The first one is this: be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. All right, that's strange language at first, but here's what it means. It's an image. It's imagery. All right? And it's a picture of God's throne. And God's throne isn't made of gold or iron or something like that. Instead, it's made of praises. It's made of the literal songs sung by thousands of generations of people who have worshiped him. That is the throne on which he sits and rests and rules and feels most comfortable in our praise. I like that image. Second thing I want to pull out from the chorus is this: we lift our voice with the heavens. And what does that mean? That means that when we sing in this room, like we're about to sing again in like 10 minutes, when we sing in this room, we are not the only voices that God is hearing. And both of those images, they sound, very strange and foreign, right? But it's not just a songwriter making up stuff that rhymes and sounds neat. All right, it's biblical, it's scriptural. And this chorus of this song reminds me of a section in Hebrews. And the section in Hebrews is all about what happens when we get together in rooms like this in worship. And before the section that I'm going to read, the section of Hebrews explains this. It basically says this: hey, so when you come into rooms like this and you sing songs and you worship God, there's something else going on when you do that. You just don't see it. I say it's not like you just come in here and you sing songs and you listen to a talk and you sing one more song and then you leave and you go eat at Applebee's or whatever it is. And everything that you did in the room kind of burns away into the past and is forgotten. Hebrews says, no. It's not that. It's bigger than that. Instead, here's what happens when we sing worship songs together. And Hebrews explains it like this. It says, so when you worship, you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. When we worship in here, our voices are present in the perfect kingdom that awaits us in the future. God is hearing us there. When you worship, you have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly. We're not the only ones who will be singing in 10 minutes. And when you worship, you come to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. Our names are on the list. The future's good as done. And when we worship, you have come to God, the judge of all men. We've come into God's presence. You have come to the spirits of righteous men made perfect. We're in the presence of all the people that we've loved and lost who worship him right now. And you have come to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant. It's strange language, but if I were to try to sum up what Hebrews is teaching us about what happens when we worship and what the chorus of this Be Enthroned song is getting at, it's this: because God is eternal, he hears our worship eternally. Because God is eternal, he hears our worship eternally. And I'm telling you that truth, that concept on the screen has completely changed my perspective of what it is we're doing when we sing songs in here. And it's the number one reason that as long as I have anything to say about it, we will never stop doing it together. Let me try to explain what it means that because God is eternal, he hears our worship eternally, because this is what's about to happen in the room 10 minutes from now. So when we sing, it is not just us that God hears. He hears us and every other Christian who has ever, is ever, or will ever exist, singing together to him in unison. So he hears us singing along with every person mentioned in the Bible who believes in him. Like 10 minutes from now, he's going to hear us and Abraham and Moses and David and the Apostle Paul singing in unison as a brotherhood of people who worship him together in unison. He hears us singing along every other Christian who will never make the history books, every peasant who believed in him and loved God and died alone. No one ever knew his name. He's going to hear us singing along with all the other Christians on the other side of the planet right now having church in Africa. He's going to hear us singing along with all the other people who loved God, but we've loved and lost. Our parents, our grandparents, our babies. He will hear all of us worshiping him and praising him in unison as a people, as a brotherhood. It's much bigger than just these rooms. And then not only that, not only will he hear all of us singing to him at the same time, but he'll hear us in all times, at all times. He's eternal. He's existing in every single moment of history right now somehow. And so he'll hear us in every single moment of history right now somehow. Which means this, because God is eternal, this is the thing that has most messed me up in a great way, okay? It's hard to grasp, but try to grasp it with me. Because God is eternal, when we sing to him, so for example, thousands of years ago, when God first created everything, I mean, who knows how long ago, when God made everything and he finally said, I'm finished now. I'm finished because these men and women are very good creations and I'm finished now. In that moment, he was praised. And one of the voices he heard on that day was literally yours from today. He's eternal. It means that the moment that Jesus died on a cross, the moment that we have put our entire bet on, the moment that Jesus died on a cross and he said, it's finished, and the sky went dark and the earth shook. In that moment, when God has his foot triumphantly on the neck of death, the earth shook with his praise. And one of the voices he heard on that day, 2,000 years ago, was your voice from today. And it means that one day in the future, when Jesus will wipe every tear from our eyes and make everything new, when he will finally, for the very last time, say the words, it is finished. When we get to experience that moment and stand in his presence, the new earth will shake with praise. And among the choir of millions, we will hear our voice from today. If you catch a glimpse of it, it's overwhelming. That is what happens when we worship a God who is eternal in rooms like this. Because God is eternal, he hears our worship eternally. It's not just us singing in here. We're joining into the brotherhood, the history-long age of God's people. Everyone who has ever been or is or will be that has worshiped our God. We join in with their voices and we worship him in all times, at all times. We are totally right now in the realm of the nearly ununderstandable. But it's true. And we don't need to grasp it anymore. We don't need to try to understand it anymore. I don't know how to articulate it any better. Instead, it's enough for us to just worship him for this, to stand and give him the credit that he deserves for being eternal and for being good. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to worship our God who is eternal from an eternal point of view. And I want to explain to you what that looks like practically. All right, like how to actually practically do that, because this is the thing that's changed me. All right, so my favorite part of this Be Enthroned song is the bridge. It's my favorite part, and it goes like this. We're going to sing it here in just a couple minutes. It goes, highest praises, Lord of all. Highest praises, Lord of all. Highest praises, Lord of all. You are worthy, Lord of all. It's my favorite part of the song for two reasons. All right, first of all, it's simple. You don't got to think about it, right? You don't have to understand what it means or what you're saying when you sing it. And then second of all, I love that part of the song because it is the number one thing God desires from us. He desires our praise, our honor, right, and our thanks. and he desires our worship. He desires the credit that he deserves for being eternal and good. And so when we sing the song, and especially when we sing this highest praises part, we are going to try our best to step into the reality of God's kingdom, which is here and now and eternal. And here's how I've been doing that, all right? And it's changed the way I worship. So do this right now. I want you to actually do it. In your head, I want you to think of a moment from history or from your own life that you most want to give God praise for. Actually do it right now. A moment in your life that you most want to give God praise for, or that you wish you would have given God praise for, you just didn't know to do it at the time. Picture that moment in your head right now. Examples of that. So it could be the moment that you've held your babies for the very first time and you didn't have words, right? Could be that moment. It could be the moment that you first met your wife or your husband. It could be the moment that you were dunked in hot tubs up here on a baptism weekend. Right? Picture those moments in your heads. And as we worship and as we sing the song, have that moment in your head. And we're going to try to understand the reality that on those days, God was being praised. And one of the voices he heard is ours from today. Maybe it's the moment you hit rock bottom, right? And you thought all was lost. And now that you're years through it, you can kind of look back on it and realize that's actually the moment that God started to make everything new for me. Right? In that moment, God knew what he was doing. He knew you'd be here one day. He knew that your future held great things. You didn't know to praise him then, but he was being praised. And one of the voices he heard on that day is you from today. Picture that moment in your head that you most want to or wish you would have given God praise for. And then the truth is that for some of us in this room, we don't need to go digging in the files in the past. Instead, we need to be putting our hope and our thoughts on a moment in the future. Because we walked in here, we barely made it in here. Came crawling in here, and we're starting to think that things will never really change and things will never really get better. Or we're mourning. I know a lot of your stories. I know you're mourning. You're mourning because the cancer's not getting any better. Or you're mourning because you just this week lost someone. Spouses, children, parents, friends. And you're starting to wonder if this pain and sadness is going to last forever. If that's you, don't go digging in the past. Instead, think on your future, an eternal point of view. Because there is a day coming that's as good as done in the eyes of a God who is eternal. He promised that we will experience it. There is a day coming when you will stand in his presence and you won't have to worry about chemo anymore. And there is a day coming where you will stand again side by side with all the people that we've loved and lost, and we'll link arms with them. And one by one, the Lord your God will wipe every tear from your face. And on that day, when he makes everything new, the earth will shake with his eternal, unending, constant praise of the entire history of God's people. And when that day does come, one of the voices you will hear is your voice from today. I said it a few weeks ago, when we come into these rooms, we don't suspend reality and we don't check our baggage at the door. We bring our baggage in and we put it in the reality of the kingdom of God, which is here and now and eternal. So whether your life is at its best or at its worst right now, God has promised that he would walk through it with you. And he has eternally always been walking through this with you. And he promises that he knows what your future holds, that he's already there. And he promises that it's good for you, even though you don't understand how it'll be. He promised that this will end in healing and restoration and eternal, unending, forever perfection. And even if we're only able to grasp it for the next 4 minutes, what we are going to try to do is worship God with an eternal point of view, keeping today in the context of what Jesus has done, is doing, and what he promised us he will do, not because we understand how it's going to happen, but because we trust him. So stand with me. I want you to picture the moment in your head and have it in your head the entire time we sing this song. The moment that you want to praise God for, whether that was in your past or whether that's just for today, or whether you want to praise him for your future where you don't have to deal with all this stuff. picture it in your head and have it in your head the entire time that we sing this song. And what we are about to do is we're going to step into the reality of what the book of Hebrews says to be true. Right now, we are going to join our voices into something much larger than just this room. Our voices and all the voices at all the different campuses, all the voices at all the different churches in the world. We're joining our voices into the voice of every other Christian who has ever, is ever, and will ever live. And we're going to worship God for his eternity and for his goodness. Pray with me. Our prayer today is just the lyrics from this song. All right, God, we have come to join into the song that has been sung long before our lives. And for the next 5 minutes, we raise our voice along heaven and earth alike. And we've seen your faithful hand. We've seen it. We've seen your mercy without end. And we know that you're a king who bled and died. And we know that you are a God who sacrificed. And so all throughout this life and our past leading up today, and as we march on and on into eternity, in endless praise we cry to you, Jesus, be glorified. Jesus, be glorified. God, what we're asking in this room is that you be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations, because you're worthy of that, Lord of all. And to you, God, our slain and risen King, we lift our voices with heaven, singing you're worthy, Lord of all. And so we give you highest praises, Lord of all. We give you highest praises, Lord of all. We give you highest praises, Lord of all, because you are worthy of that, Lord of all. And we pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
We've come to join the song sung long before our lives, to raise our voice along heaven and earth alike. We've seen your faithful hand, your mercy without end, the King who bled and died, a God who sacrificed. Be enthroned upon the praises of 1,000 generations. You are worthy, Lord of all.
Thanks for sticking with us. Come back next weekend to see our Lafayette campus pastor teaching live here online.